Times, they are a-changing, chantait Bob Dylan, lauréat du prix Nobel il y a 60 ans.
The times, they are a-changing, sung by Bob Dylan, Nobel Prize laureate 60 years ago. Since then, this song has not lost anything of its relevance and evokes a reality that each generation shares. Times change all the time, but they don't always change so quickly. There are decades when nothing happens and weeks when decades happen, said Vladimir Lenin. Today, we are caught in a storm that is transforming our world at an alarming rate. An atrocious war is raging on our own continent. The global market is mined by protectionism and disloyal competition. The fundamental values of international law and free and fair trade are being undermined. Europe is struggling to find answers to the great challenges that lie ahead. Our continent has long believed itself to be living in a post-historical paradise of relative peace and prosperity, as the American chronicler Robert Kagan described it. After the Third World War, the perpetuity of the Pax became our objective. The rules of international law and multilateralism were our means. A dangerous mixture of moral arrogance and naivety made us believe that it was not only the right way, but also the only way, a path that every country would eventually take. But the fact that Europe presents itself as a shining model has not been enough to achieve it. Even more so, despite its enlightened spirit, Europe has remained blind to the threatening developments elsewhere in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, nearly 4 years ago, the despotic regime of Moscow launched its war, which was not provoked and unjustified, against the Ukrainian sovereign state. We had to admit, helplessly, that we were unable to provide our own means with sufficient help to a brotherly people to defend its democratic values and freedoms. In the meantime, mercantilist thought has re-inspired itself in the spirit of the world. Multilateral cooperation and shared values seem to be abandoned in favor of a transactionalism based on an implacable logic of the zero-sum game, quid pro quo, for what, dis fudas, donon donon. This is an adage that many Europeans, and certainly European diplomats, are no longer accustomed to, and which leaves them without a voice. At the other end of the world, state giants are strengthening their grip on the global economy with a philosophy of beggar thy neighbor. They disturb the competitiveness of our companies and threaten our prosperity. If we do not react, Europe will become more and more dependent on other great powers. We therefore need a new diplomatic momentum. We need a diplomatic vision that speaks the language of power. If Europe can remain the guardian of peace, stability, international law, and democratic values, it must also dare to use its power. But to do so, it must first strengthen the foundation of this power. And this foundation is our prosperity, and it presents serious cracks. Our economy is struggling to grow. Our industry is in serious difficulty. Europe has been the cradle of the Industrial Revolution, but it is also at the threshold of the digital revolution. The Draghi report of last year found it pitiless. In the United States, the capital available is 3 times more important. It is therefore not surprising that 2 European startups out of 3 cross the Atlantic as soon as they know of a growing success. Europe, therefore, has almost no technological giant. In the last 50 years, our continent has not given birth to any new company whose market value exceeds 100 billion euros. Several American companies have a market value of more than 1 billion euros. 3 weeks ago, a technology giant for the first time in history crossed the threshold of $5 billion. In addition to this lack of investment space, Europe also sees internal trade barriers, as the International Monetary Fund emphasized at the beginning of the year. The result is that our prosperity engine is on fire. Ladies and gentlemen, The good news is that the solutions are within reach. We almost all have them in our own hands. The deeper integration of our internal European market and the realization of a real savings and investment union can make our economy much more sustainable and give our companies oxygen. This strengthens our competitiveness, increases the labor market, increases productivity, and stimulates innovation. The growth that follows is not only economic, it brings more prosperity and well-being to our citizens, but it also gives Europe power and influence to put more weight on the scale, weight to break free from the clutches of other great powers. Europe can therefore once again present itself as a reliable partner, a beacon of stability and respect that the rest of the world can look up to, a partner that many countries are looking for in South America, in Africa, in Asia. A prosperous Europe can once again speak the language of power with renewed confidence. A prosperous Europe can use its power to improve the world. The European member states, the Council and the Commission are increasingly aware of this logic. In recent years, we have taken certain steps in the right direction, both in terms of defense and in terms of economic resilience. Unfortunately, the European Union is not a marathon runner. It is a marathon runner and not a sprinter. A year after the disappointing Draghi report, only 1 in 10 recommendations were carried out. So the question is how we can achieve results faster. Mario Draghi recently spoke of pragmatic federalism, where member states could work closer and closer together. I completely agree with that ambition, but I think the choice of words is a bit unfortunate. Talking about federalism in a European context, also in a Belgian context, leads to needless and narrowed discussions about political frameworks. In order not to waste the debate on this political reflex, I choose a concept that I think covers the load much better: functional integration. This concept is not ideological, but practical and aimed at what is achievable. Politics is the art of achievable, the possible. Breaking through the political logic and following an economic agenda leads to functional integration, where member states can make the choice to work together faster on the established ambition to strengthen our competitiveness. Functional integration can lead to a sustainable union, an agile union. Not Europe at different speeds, but a European Union that can flexibly and dynamically respond to needs, challenges, and opportunities with which member states are confronted. Working together, I think Belgium knows what that is. At least, I hope that we know what it is. It is our destiny to work together. Let's make the most of it. And we have historical and natural allies to deepen economic relations with. Together with the Netherlands and Luxembourg, this country took the lead for the European Union and the Schengen Treaty. We were the forerunners. It was a victory in the spirit of the well-known saying from the time of Emperor Charles V Concordia, res parvo crescant. Through unity, small businesses grow. That was the motto of the Dutch Republic, and it also inspired the young Belgian state. That spirit can be rekindled today. It is natural to strive within the Benelux for deeper economic integration. Article 350 of the treaty gives us all the space to achieve and expand the goals of the Benelux. An ambition that I hope the next Dutch government, which I hope will come soon, will also cherish. However, it must be clear that Belgium must seize every opportunity to promote growth and must therefore build bonds with all member states with a common economic and strategic agenda. I am also particularly pleased that I recently, together with my German colleague Friedrich Merz, and supported by Commission Chairman Ursula von der Leyen, have been able to bring together a group of EU countries in a group that will stand up for the competitiveness of our industry. The first seeds have been sown, and I expect to see the first buds during an extra-European Council about the industry in the castle of Aldebais on February 12th of next year. And on February 11th, as Mrs. von der Leyen promised me yesterday, the European Industry Summit will be held in my beloved Antwerp. These are all positive signals. Ladies and gentlemen, if Europe wants to stand in the world with a renewed enthusiasm as a desirable yet self-confident partner, then Belgium must also be an example for other European countries of trust and responsibility. Dense socio-economic and urgent budgetary reforms are inevitable, unavoidable. Only by reconciling our convictions with our conscience can we be fully aware of the duties we have on behalf of all citizens in this country, whose welfare and well-being must be prioritized by us. As Prime Minister, I will try to defend these interests boldly but firmly. In these turbulent geopolitical and economic times, I want to decide what I started with, the version of Bob Dylan. Come, senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway, don't block up the hall, for he that gets hurt will be he who is stalled. There is a battle outside, and it's raging. It will soon shake your windows and rattle your walls for the times. They are a-changing. Thank you.